No, and today I'm here talking to Paula Manaton, and very unusually, Paula is not self-employed or freelance. She's actually gone into alternative employment. So this is the first interviewee who's taken this route. So it'll be really interesting to see how you went about this, Paula. But first of all, thank you so much for being here this afternoon with me.
Welcome.
Okay, so cast your mind back. Can you remember why you became a teacher in the first place?
Okay, so when I was at secondary school doing my A levels and looking at universities and thinking about what I wanted to do and not really knowing what I wanted to do, it was actually my drama teacher. So one of the A levels I took was theatre studies A level. And it was my drama teacher who sort of said, I think you'd make a really good primary school teacher. And it was something I had kind of thought about. You do the usual year 12, it would have been. It was lower six in my day,
Yeah,
but
it
lower
is.
six, lower six work experience. So I didn't actually do that. I went somewhere else. I went into a marketing company quite randomly, but then went and popped myself into a primary school just for a week, just a local primary school, did really enjoy it. And so I just decided that I would apply for Bachelor of Education courses at various universities. And that's what I ended up doing. So I ended up going to a teacher training college. Well, the teacher training college was part of a bigger college, and did a Bachelor of Education in drama and English for 4 years.
Right, yeah. And then
Went
became
straight into teaching.
into
Yeah.
teaching
Into
as
a primary school
primary.
teaching. Yeah. Went straight into primary school teaching.
Yeah. And how long did you teach for?
So I taught for 18 years. I taught in 3 different primary schools, full-time teaching, around and about Cheshire. So I live in Cheshire. So I taught in 3 different primary schools in and around Cheshire, 3 very different primary schools in and around Cheshire. And then I did supply for a couple of years. So I did supply for the school I'd previously worked at. And I also did supply for another school in the area where one of the teachers I'd previously worked with had become a deputy head. So I sort of did supply for about 2 years, coupled with some days with the local education authority, doing PE inset. Because one of the things that had happened when I was a primary school teacher is that I'd become coordinator for PE. Rather bizarrely, basically, we'd had an Ofsted. The Ofsted had gone really, really well, apart from PE. The PE coordinator left. I was asked to coordinate PE. And then I ended up doing a lot of PE.
It tickles me in primary schools how everybody just has to be a coordinator for something,
Yeah, definitely.
regardless.
My first coordinator's job. So my degree was in drama and English. I became a design technology coordinator to start off with. And during the time I was a primary school teacher, I was design technology coordinator. I was drama coordinator, which doesn't really exist. It's tagged on to English. So I was English coordinator. I was art coordinator. And I was I was geography coordinator for a year. And then I was PE coordinator, and I ended up being PE coordinator for about 8 years. I don't know if it's because I wasn't the young one, actually. I was the young one when I started PE coordinating. But yeah, so I did, when I sort of left, I did, as I say, 2 years doing supply and working for the local education authority, because I'd sort of gradually come to the conclusion I didn't want to be a full-time teacher at that moment anymore. It just wasn't fitting in to my lifestyle for lots of reasons, which I'm happy to go into. So I did the supply because I wanted to keep teaching. I wanted to keep my hand in with teaching. I did the stuff with the local education authority because they knew me and they asked me, and it was a really good sort of different thing to do. And that meant going into primary schools, doing inset training, not just with teachers, but also with midday assistants and school sport coordinators, which is basically year 6, who want to, do something
Right. Yeah.
in addition to what they were doing. Yeah. So I did that for 2 years. So yeah, so 18 years altogether.
So what happened at that point? Because it sounds like you were enjoying that and it
I
fitted.
was actually.
So what
Um,
happened for that to lead to you seeking employment outside of public sector?
So basically, I decided I didn't want to do supply because I like having my own class. I like having my own children. I like having my own classroom walls. I like being in charge. So I decided I didn't want to do supply any longer. And I had 3 young children at the time. My husband worked away a lot, which is one of the reasons why I left teaching. And I was just trying to juggle everything. So I don't know, I was just talking to friends about something different to do that would fit in with where I was at that moment. And a suggestion came up. Friend of mine who worked in a recruitment company, they were looking to start apprenticeships within this recruitment company. It was a large umbrella recruitment company. They were looking to start apprenticeships there. And one of the things that they needed to go alongside the apprenticeships was somebody to deliver the functional skills. Because to do an apprenticeship, you need to have GCSE level C or grade 4 as it is now. And if you don't have that, you have to have the equivalent in order to gain your apprenticeship. So they were looking at doing apprenticeships, and they needed somebody to come on board and head up the functional skills aspect.
So
So
is that
basically,
apprentices to work within the recruitment company, or
yes,
to supply
yes,
apprentices
yes. So it
to?
was in-house.
Right.
So it was in-house. It was this particular umbrella company. They've got 11, 12 recruitment companies working within them. And some of those were quite big, some of those were quite small. So, for example, one of them had 50 branches up and down the UK, and they had apprentices working within. They wanted to have apprentices coming in and to work the way basically up. But also, they were delivering level 3 apprenticeships and level 5 apprenticeships, which aren't school leaver apprenticeships. They're for people who have been in the business for a while.
Right.
And it's a way of progressing up a particular career pathway. So it was just basically they wanted to be providing, career progression and professional development to members of their staff. And so apprenticeships was one of the ways of doing that. So yes, so it was a friend of mine and she was telling me about this job and she was like, this would be right up your street. So I just kind of looked into it, went for it, got the job. It was as simple as that. I'm not messing around. It was an idea, and then literally 4 weeks later, I'm walking through the door,
Yeah.
starting the job. Mm.
Yeah. So, what were the similarities between teaching core subjects, English and maths, to primary school kids and to apprentices? What do you think were the transferables there?
Well, basically, it's engaging the pupils or it's engaging the students, isn't it? So whether you're so I taught reception through to year 6. But I hadn't done key stage 3 and hadn't done key stage 4. I'd only done key stage 1 and 2. So there was a change in the curriculum that I was delivering. Obviously, the knowledge, the skills, the understanding, etc., was higher up in level and requirements. But I think at the end of the day, it's all about being able to teach. And if you know the subject matter and you can engage your audience and you can identify how to teach them. So, learning styles are the same, doesn't matter how old you are. So it's learning styles, it's just, various ways of teaching, different methods of teaching, just essentially thinking about how you're going to cascade that knowledge and develop those skills to get somebody through. Essentially, for functional skills, it's about passing an exam. It's called functional skills, and it is to sort of give them skills for life and skills that they can transfer into other areas. But essentially, at the end of the day, it is about passing an exam, because without that exam, they cannot pass their apprenticeship. So they're motivated because they want to pass their apprenticeship.
Yeah.
But they're not motivated because they didn't like English at school, or they didn't like maths at school, or they couldn't do English at school, or they couldn't do maths at school.
So they show up to your sessions with a failure mindset.
Yeah. And for some of them as well, so I was, some of these people were doing operational management level 5. So they were, for example, branch managers or account managers. So, you know, these are people ranging from their late 20s through to their early 50s. And for some of them, they were only doing functional skills because they could not find their certificates. And because because we hadn't done it in so long, I can say that because I'm a similar age now, because they hadn't done it in so long, they're not on the government system. So for some of these people, they were having to do maths and English because they couldn't find their O-level or GCSE certificates. But it had been 20, 25, 30 years since they'd actually sat in a classroom doing maths.
Yeah.
So they were just massively de-skilled. Although it's funny because when you start getting into it and you start thinking about the relevance, so it's like, are you going on holiday? Yes. Did you book your holiday? Yes. Have you thought about your travel insurance? Have you thought about your currency? Have you thought about your timetables? Yes, yes, yes. And then all that maths, when they see the relevance, you know, do you like baking? Yes. Well, that's ratio and that's volumes and that's, so it's just trying to find those relevances. But yeah, so I think the major thing, going back to your original question, is engaging the audience, making them see the relevance and motivating them.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you don't motivate a 5-year-old in the same way you motivate a 25-year-old or a 35-year-old, but it's all about working out how to motivate them, how to engage them, and how they see the relevance of it, so it makes sense to them.
Yeah. So obviously an ex-teacher is the ideal person for that job.
I think so, yeah. Well, it worked for me. Yeah.
So I know one thing that puts people off leaving teaching or even moving schools, and it did me, was the whole filling in an application form. What do I put on my CV? How do I write a cover letter? So presumably you did have to do all that.
I
How
did
did
have to
you
do that,
feel
yeah.
about doing that?
Actually, I'm trying to remember because it was a while ago. It was fine. It was absolutely fine. My CV was up to date anyway. I mean, I'd only worked in 3 different primary schools, but I'd done the supply teaching and the other bits and pieces. So my CV was up to date anyway, and had various things on it. Writing a cover letter is fine, was fine. I'm trying to remember what I did. I didn't Google it. I know that much. I think I just probably asked people, what do you write in a covering letter? Got my husband to proofread it for me, that kind of thing. I knew people who worked in recruitment, so they were quite good to ask because, you know, that's what their job's all about, looking at CVs, looking at application letters, etc. So I did sort of have a little network around me to help me with that. But I didn't find that daunting, but I don't think that's the kind of thing I would find daunting.
No. And the interview, was it very different to a teaching interview, or was it?
Yes. Well, yes. So when you go for a teaching interview, quite often you'll do like a lesson. So you prepare your lesson, you take a group of children, or you take a class of children, you're observed by quite a few people. The 3 schools I all worked in were all church schools. So the vic is on the panel. So you've got the vicar, you've got the head of governors, you've got the head teacher, you've maybe got the deputy head. So there's sort of a panel of people, they watch you, and then you've got sort of various questions. When I was interviewed for this job, it was a 2-step process, but I didn't have to, you know, I didn't have to actually do anything. I didn't have to teach or anything like that, which I think is surprising now when I look back on it. I've since moved jobs, and again, when I moved jobs, it was just a 2-stage interview process. I didn't physically have to do anything to demonstrate my abilities or my skill sector in that particular area.
I think teaching is
no,
pretty unique in that, probably.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. I think some jobs maybe you have to do a presentation or something. Yeah. But teaching would be the only job, I guess, where you would actually walk into a room full of 30 people you don't know, sit down and teach them for 45 minutes. And be observed by other people.
And how long, because presumably you didn't get an answer on the day like you would do with a teaching application. So how long did you have to wait to find out if you got the job or not?
No, it was only a couple of days. So a couple of days after the first stage interview, I was asked to go for a second stage interview. I was actually offered both the jobs the day of my second stage interview, but that's not necessarily the norm.
Right. Yeah.
But I was actually offered both the jobs on that second stage interview at both occasions. But yeah, that actually typically wouldn't be the norm. Although they do tell you quite quickly.
Yeah.
They don't sort of make it a long process.
So how long did you stay in that first new job?
So that was 3 years. Yeah, that was 3 years.
And
And
do you think if you hadn't had this friend who told you about this job that was available, and do you think you would have, because obviously you said you were at a stage there where you were thinking that maybe lifestyle wise something else was called for, would you have then actively pursued looking for another job, do you think, or would you have just jogged along as you were?
no, I wouldn't have jogged along. I definitely wouldn't have jogged along because I knew I didn't want to do. I did the supply bit, I think, on reflection, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I wanted to buy myself some time. So it was a logical thing to do in that interim period. Plus, I had a lot more flexibility. So I had 3 young children and husband working away. I could pick and choose what I wanted to do. I could pick and choose well, I only worked in 2 schools, so I could pick and choose that bit as well. I wouldn't have wanted to be a supply teacher on the books of a recruitment agency, and you get a call at 8 o'clock in the morning and you go wherever. That wasn't of interest to me. So it worked for me because I knew the schools, so I knew the staff. I gradually got to, in one school, I knew all the children because I'd worked there. In the other school, I gradually got to know all the children, and you sort of do become much more part of it. And it was really, really good for that interim period. But I knew I didn't want to do supply all the time, because I just like having that ownership and that autonomy, and you don't necessarily get that with supply teaching. So I would have actively have looked for stuff. I mean, I was always talking to people. I was always intrigued as to what people do. I was offered a job as a classroom assistant, and again, I knew I didn't want to do that.
No.
So that wouldn't have given that. I'd have been annoyed in the classroom, I think.
I know, I don't.
Because I want to be
I know
in charge.
friends who have been, qualified teachers with their own classes and their own room and everything, and then sort of take a step back and become a TA just so they have not the hassle, and so much tongue biting has to go on.
My friend's done it for years, and she's really good at it actually, and I'm still amazed she does it. But it wouldn't have been for me.
No.
So yeah, and I don't know. I think I just wanted to work in a different environment as well.
Yeah.
And I went from the public sector into corporate private sector, which was nice. It was different. It was a little bit daunting. It was a little bit scary, but it just sort of.
Was there a difference in how you were treated in terms of the effect on your confidence and your ability to do the job, or the respect and appreciation that you were shown from above?
I think the only problem is that because we were doing apprenticeships within a company that wasn't an apprenticeship specialist, there wasn't necessarily an understanding from some of the people above of actually what that entailed, of what the so it was, for example, you don't make money out of apprentices. Companies do. I work for a private company now, and that's what they do. And obviously they make money out of apprentices. But this was a big, massive corporate recruitment company, massive umbrella company that had, as I say, 12 recruitment companies within it. And it was all about making money. And you don't make money in that way out of apprentices. So from that perspective, I think it was quite difficult because some people didn't quite understand what we did. But that didn't mean that they didn't respect what we did. And I think actually because they didn't understand what we did, you could just kind of crack on and get on with it.
Yeah.
And that was quite nice, actually. And I sort of took the role on pretty much from fresh, in fact, from fresh. So started with a completely clean slate and built it up. And that I enjoy doing that because, as I say, we started with nothing. it became a little bit of a project, with a time scale and all these kind of things. And yeah, so we had our objectives and we knew what we wanted to do and how we wanted to get there. So it was good fun. It was interesting. It was exciting. It was different. It was new. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed it, and it worked for me.
But you moved on from there.
Yes, so I was there for 3 years, and then I went to work with. So one of the girls that, well, actually three of the girls that I worked with at that particular company, they all ended up working for this other company. One had gone elsewhere first, so people do move on after a while, don't they? And again, they made me aware. They were nothing to do with the process, but they made me aware that they were looking for a functional skills lead at this particular company. And I just thought, it'd be a bit of a change. It was a company that just do apprentices, so it's what they do. And I thought that'll be nice. There'd be more sort of, you've got external clients, so that'd be interesting to work with. Completely different sector away from recruitment. And I enjoyed working in recruitment, but it was, so it was just something a little bit different. And I just thought, yeah, I'd like to give that a go. So again, applied for the job, interviewed for the job, got the job. Yeah. So yeah, and it's just a bit different. So previously I'd worked for a company with, well, a massive umbrella company of thousands of people, I would imagine. And I knew pockets of people. So I knew sort of I'd go into branches and I knew the people in the branches, and obviously worked with my apprentices in the branches. So I knew them. But yeah, now I know everybody in the company who I work with. So I know all my colleagues. There's a real sort of team feel about it. It's nicer. We have our conferences and 40 people go to the conference, as opposed to, well, we had mini conferences. It were like 600 people at a conference. So it's just completely different from that. And it's nice. Just enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. I know this is a bit daft question. When you ask me this question, I'm like, have you ever regretted leaving teaching?
No, I haven't. And people do say, would you go back into it? And I always say no. although I'm not being funny, with all these teacher strikes going on, and I'm thinking £30,000 for an NQT. I really maybe should think about it. But no, I wouldn't. I do enjoy. I mean, I've got a good salary where I am, and I do enjoy where I am. It's just swings and roundabouts, but it's just different. And now I work from home all the time as well, which wasn't the original plan. So when I first started doing this, I was going up and down the country. I was working from home some of the week, and I was out and about a lot of the week. So I was getting trains and getting in the car and going out and about, and that was all really nice. And going to visit people and see them in their places of work. Then COVID hit, so we all became online, but it works online. And it was as we were coming out of COVID that I changed companies. So I changed companies June 2021. So I'm just coming up for 2 years. And yeah, and now it's all online. So it's different again, but it works. I still do go out and about a bit. So I live in Cheshire and our head office is in Shrewsbury, about an hour away. So I go to head office once or twice a month, which is nice. I go and meet some of my colleagues. We're going meet for the afternoon in a Starbucks or somewhere, and we just sort of sit next to each other on our laptops working, but that's quite nice. So it's just a bit different, really. Yeah. I do miss for going out and about though and seeing people face to face.
Yeah. Is there any advice that you would pass on to any teachers watching this, worrying or wondering about if any other employer would take them?
So many transferable skills, so many transferable skills. And the one big thing about teachers is that they're very personable. So, I think a nature of a teacher, a good teacher, is that they are engaging, they are personable, they build relationships really easily. So, you should have the confidence to go out and just try something a little bit different. I would really encourage people to do it if that's what they want to do. Have a look around, look at different options, think about different things. apprenticeships, I think, is a really, really good one, because, you know, you can work for apprenticeship providers like I do, or you can go and work for a local college. So, for example, local colleges, they need functional skills teachers there because they have people who go and do various whatever course, but they need the English and the maths, so they need but they don't necessarily do GCSEs, they do functional skills instead. Because I saw an advert not so long for a local college that's like a sixth form college, but also does so it does apprentices, it also does degrees there, and they were looking for a functional skills teacher. And I might have applied for that if I didn't, you know, wasn't really happy where I was at this moment. So those jobs are out there, and I just think it's something just a little bit different.
And I think it's interesting, actually, what you were saying before. You were just having conversations with people.
Yeah, exactly.
If people, yeah, just instead of, like you probably did, I know I did, just moaning about, oh, I want to get out of teaching, but I don't know what to do, I'm stuck. Put it out there in your social
Yeah,
circles that
yeah.
you are looking to get out of teaching, and you positively are interested in opportunities. Because if you don't explicitly tell people, they wouldn't have you in front of mind when they hear about opportunities, and they just think, oh, I don't know anybody who wants
No,
to.
that's true. That is
Yeah,
true. So yeah, you know, tell people. I mean, there's a difference between moaning about your job and saying to somebody, I'd quite like to try something different.
yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, so you know, I just used to chat to people, and it'd be like, oh, you know, how's it going? Oh, it's going okay, but you know, I'm just thinking I might just give it a little bit of a change. Um, and you know, I've sort of made my choices based on my lifestyle at the time, what was going on with me at the time. Um, I didn't leave teaching because I stopped like teaching. I never stopped liking being a teacher. I didn't love it as much as I did when I started. And, you know, it wasn't. So I started teaching in the 90s, mid 90s.
Oops, I didn't.
And, you know, well, yeah, it wasn't paperwork then, was it? It wasn't all that
No.
paperwork. It was just all about, you know, we didn't even have SATs when I first started. I'm sure we didn't. So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't that kind of thing. And it just gradually over time, there was always Ofsted. There was always Ofsted. So there was always things like Ofsted and things like that. That never bothered me. Ofsted never bothered me. But yeah, you know, it's just sort of the paperwork, the work-life balance. I think because I was a PE coordinator, it sounds lovely being a PE coordinator, but at primary school, it's quite intense because you're literally the only person that does the netball, the hockey, the football, the cross country.
Oh, so
That
if there's teams, it's you.
Yeah, yeah. So every night after school, if it wasn't, you know, staff meeting one night, the other 4 nights a week, you were either running a sports club or you were persuading another member of staff that they would love to run the football team. Yeah, I mean, I even had I worked in Warrington for 5 years, and we were round the corner from Warrington Wolves, which is this massive rugby
Yeah.
league club. And I even, you know, naturally made links with them because, to be fair to Warrington Wolves, they were looking at making links with the local schools. And I ended up doing like having a little rugby team. And we used to go and play competitions on a Saturday morning. Well, I didn't envisage that when I was filling out my applications for the
No.
university. You know, I didn't think, oh yeah, I'll fill this out and I'll spend my Saturday mornings with, you
A
know,
bunch of other people's kids.
yeah, 10 year six kids playing tag rugby. Hadn't really seen that coming. So yeah.
Yeah, you expect it if you're, well, I know some schools do Saturday morning teams. I think Alty Boys Grammar School do Saturday
Yeah.
mornings,
Yeah,
but
it's more of a high school
not an
thing, isn't it? It's
estate
more of a
school.
senior thing. It's not
No,
really a primary school thing, but I think just the way they did it, they did the rugby, everything, the cross country, all those kind of things were in the evenings.
yeah.
Um, you know, yeah, but and the town sports and things were always in the evenings, but the rugby was on Saturday morning. But even so, it's still your evenings, isn't it?
Yeah.
So my mother-in-law, a fabulous lady, still never understood the concept. I couldn't walk into the classroom at 9:15 and walk out the classroom at 4:45. She never understood that concept. Never. And then when I had children and I was dropping them off at 7 o'clock in the morning at nursery and running in the door at 6 o'clock at night to pick them up, she never understood that. And she never understood why I still took my children to nursery in the holidays. I think she just thought I was a wicked mother. But lots of reasons. One, because I needed the school holidays to do stuff for school, and two, it's good for their continuity. Three, you were paying for it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been absolutely fabulous chatting to you, and I think
Thank you.
given people watching a lot of encouragement to think that there are nice, safe paid jobs out there.
Yeah,
You don't have to
definitely.
be self-employed.
No.
And yeah, talk to people, let people know that you're available and you're looking. And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much, Paula.
Thank you. You're welcome.